everybody to the Internal Compass podcast, where I empower you to live a pain-free life and hopefully to be a little bit more realigned from inside out. I'm Samuel Archambault. I'm your host, osteopath, and kinesiologist. And today we are going to dive in a little bit more about the perception of pain. So maybe you've watched my content already. Hopefully you've watched or listened to the 2 previous episodes and you've noticed that, yes, perception of pain is a recurring theme on this podcast, mostly because I see a lot of one-way street when it comes to pain. In other words, I see a lot of professionals and many of my clients, they kind of feel that pain is going one way, which is physical. They feel pain in their body, therefore they think something's wrong with their spine or there's some kind of a muscle damage that creates this specific pain. And today I want to shake things up a little bit, and I want to maybe bring you another perspective on that. And hopefully by using a couple of stories, a couple of case studies, I can make a point on how this is not true and how pain is actually very subjective. And as much as this is like deconstructing some of our beliefs, it is also amazing because that also points us in the direction that we have more agency. In other words, we have more control over how do we perceive our pain and therefore how we can heal it. Because imagine if all pain would be only physical and therefore we could only rely on a pill or a mobility drill or some kind of an intervention by someone else, a surgery, another example. Well, that would be terrible because then that would leave you absolute no control. And this podcast's mission is really to give you back control so that you can actually take care of it yourself and have a little bit more ownership. And for that, I think it starts with empowerment and it starts with knowledge, a little bit more of education around it. So I want to start today's episode with a story. It was dated a while ago, 1995. In the British Medical Journal, there is this one case study, so basically this one story, about one specific individual, 29-year-old construction worker, this is a real story, who showed up at the emergency room with a lot of pain, but crazy pain. Basically, he was doing his job and out of a sudden, an accident happened and he ended up with a nail right through his boot. What happened then? So he showed up at the hospital really in big pain. And then the first step, of course, when the doctor saw that, they said, okay, we need to operate, right? We need to get the nail out of this. It was about a 20 centimeter nails. So, okay, what do we do with this? We need to take it out. The one thing is, obviously, the guy was in pain. It's clearly stated in the article that this person was physically sensing the pain. Maybe you know where I'm going with this. But yes, as they remove the boot and they also remove the nail, they also noticed that, hey, actually the nail has gone between his toes. So it did not even touch and announce a little bit piece of his skin. It was right, literally, straight in between his toes. What happened after this? Well, automatically, the person's pain disappeared. So this is a very concrete example to show you that by believing, by thinking that we are experiencing pain because of the context, it changes how we feel. This person, how he was feeling his pain, it was legit. It was his own perception of reality. Therefore, his brain interpreted that as pain. Because the brain is a predicting machine. In other words, if you recognize something through your visual system, through your sensors, through your senses, how you feel, how you smell, what you see, and the context provides you that, hey, this is going to hurt. Well, guess what? Your brain will interpret that as pain, and therefore it will make you feel pain. Because remember, and I think I will say that every single episode, but pain is a message. So your brain is telling your entire system, don't do that. This hurts. This is going to harm you. But it's not always perfect, right? Our brain tries to predict. Our brain tries to keep us alive. And in that specific situation, it was clearly not founded. So that kind of story for me proves without any doubt that actually we know that pain is not only physical. Pain is a mix of many factors: the social context, our beliefs, our fears. Of course, the physical component is there. But remember, pain is mostly a nerve and central one. In other words, it's not necessarily your skin that is feeling the pain, or it's not necessarily the disc between your vertebrae that are feeling the pain. It is the nerve around it that is sending this information up to your brain, and then your brain is going to interpret that and then make you feel a specific response. And also, it will also tell you a specific action to do in answer to that, to respond, to protect yourself better. So I want to tell you another story that there is this another construction worker, and this is also another true story. I know, I guess construction workers, this is a very dangerous job, but so another person was on job, not in the same environment. Okay, it was someone completely different. But this one person was going through some construction actions. You can tell that I'm not a construction worker, although I'm really good with my hands, but not in that way. And this person did a small mistake, and he felt something that irritated his face, and he kind of felt that something went under his jaw, and like some hit some one of his teeth. So what happened next? He felt, okay, something happened. So he just decided, hey, this is not too bad. I'm gonna brush it off, because he couldn't see anything. He felt that something happened, but couldn't see anything. And then what happens next is, hey, at some point he decided, hey, maybe I should go to the hospital to get this checked. So the next day he decided to go to the hospital. And then as he got to the hospital, they are doing an X-ray, and they noticed that actually this guy put a nail through his face. And I'm not lying. There's actually a reference for this that I can put in the notes of the episode if you're curious to know a little bit more about this one specific case study. But this person has the X-ray is quite shocking. The nail basically goes under his jaw and goes all the way through his skull. So the nail was really close to his brain. So in other words, the guy almost died because of that. And because that person did not see anything, and there was no physical or there was no social cues, there was nothing in his environment that was telling this person, maybe this should hurt. Well, this person did not interpret the situation as being harmful. Am I saying that if you put a nail through your head, you're not going to feel anything? Of course not. We need to keep that with a broader view. But those two case studies, for me, they make a point. Exactly, they make a point on how pain is a subjective experience. On one hand, the person saw the nail, thought that he was harmed, so really like there was damaged tissue, and then the opposite was true for the other person, and somehow the pain response was completely different. So those two case studies tells us that pain is never only physical, and pain may be social. Pain may be related to our beliefs. Pain may be also related to what do we feel and receive in terms of information through our nerves. Can we control that? Well, yes and no. No, because our nervous system is wired one way. So if you feel pain, for example, for some low back pain, well, if you tell me I've had an X-ray and actually my disc are being compromised, I have a hernia, and therefore that's why I feel pain. Fair enough. If you have an hernia and you feel pain, you can easily make the connection between the two. But you know what? Most of people who have hernias don't feel it at all. And that is a true statement, okay? If you look at observational studies and you look at, they've been doing basically like research that just take a look at people that have hernia and the pain level that they feel, you can tell that most people with hernias are not even aware that they have hernias because they haven't done the test. Maybe they feel a little pain here and there, but What's the difference? Well, they probably told themselves, maybe it's age, or they find some kind of other reasons, and then they continue on with their life. There's, of course, other factors such as, are you a healthy individual? Do you have resilience in your body? Do you have a strong core that can support you? Are you an active person? All of those things kind of course, help you to reduce that level of pain. But not only that, but the people that have hernias that don't feel pain, they feel less pain because they don't know they have a hernia. So you can see already that the mental context into is completely different, because I see that a lot with my clients. Everybody, when we feel pain, we need a reason. We need a reason of what is the exact thing, that muscle, that ligament, that bone, that structure, whatever, that is causing my pain. And you know what? It's one thing, many things, all of those things at the same time. And the goal of pain is not to find the reason why we have pain, but it's to listen to that message and to some takeaways from that. So, in other words, I want you to understand, if you have one thing to remember from today's episode, is that our brain is an amplifier. So, in a subsequent episode, I will want to dig in a little bit more the neurophysiology of pain. So, how does pain really works in the body? From, like, if I burn my hand on a stove, what's happening in my body, in my nervous system, from the nerve all the way to my brain. So if you're a little bit more interested into that, it's a little bit more geeky and a little bit more dry, but it's super interesting to understand. But for now, I want you to remember that our brain, especially our prefrontal cortex, so if that is right, like on the other side of your forehead, right behind that, so the front part of your brain, this is the part of your brain that analyzes, do the planning, and especially do interpretation of data that comes in our senses. So for pain, that means that this is where your beliefs, this is where your thoughts, your emotions are going to filter the sensation of pain. So imagine, same sensation, right? You have a hernia, same sensation go through your nervous system, through your spinal cord, all the way to your brain. But why do someone feel it more and someone feel it less? Well, this is in part not explained by everything, but your prefrontal cortex is one region that is responsible for interpreting that. So, okay, I'm having a message. What does that mean? That's what your brain is trying to analyze. What does that mean? So it means that, oh, if you're on one side and you know you have a hernia, and now you have attached your pain with your hernia, then that your brain will then analyze this as long as I have hernia, I will hurt. I will be in pain. Well, that's obviously not true, because other people have hernias and they're not in so much pain. So you could see here that this you have agency on, this you have control on. So this you can deconstruct. You can look at this belief of yours and tell yourself, where is the proof of that? So if you have hernias and you think that your pain is only related to that, well, obviously I just destroyed your belief there by reasoning, by cognitively assessing the situation in a little bit more in an objective ways. So in other words, you look at the situation and you tell yourself, do I have any concrete proof that this is the reality? And can I change that? What if you say, hey, what if my pain is not necessarily only dedicated to my hernia? Because I agree with you, it might be part of it. But what if my pain is actually helping me to protect myself so that the hernia doesn't get as bad, right? So that I'm able to crisp my muscle around it so that the disc doesn't bulge even more. So when we start to perceive our pain in that manner, what it does is that then it will motivate us to go a little bit further, one step ahead, and say, well, what can I do better to support my body so that my hernia doesn't get worse, and maybe I can heal it? Because yes, hernias have been shown to reabsorb themselves. That's why right now, if you go for an operation for hernias, the only reason why most doctors will operate will only be if this is really dangerous for your nervous system. Because if the disc that is bulged, so that goes on one side of your spine, irritates really important nerves that might compromise, example, how you can hold on your pee and your poo envy. Well, of course, you don't want that to be compromised because you want to be functioning. But most people or most doctors will prescribe to start with physiotherapy and exercises to try to be able to change that and to try to rehabilitate, because yes, it's possible to be completely pain-free or to be completely functional, at least with an hernia. So another thing I want you to remember from that episode is that there is a really big difference between being harmed and being hurt. And to come back to our case studies, the first person who had the nail through his boot, he was hurt. So he thought that there was some kind of pain, but he was not harmed. Harmed is when you have physical damage, you have tissue damage, right? The second person, he was harmed. Clearly, there was some tissue, physical damage to his body, right? He has this nail right through his skull. So that is one question you can ask yourself if you're wondering, okay, I am feeling pain right now, but I am not sure if, for example, I should keep moving or if I should push through the pain, or then if I could or if it's better for me to just take it easy. I would argue that if you are hurt, meaning if you have pain, but you don't have any tissue damage, there is an argument here to be able to continue to move, and not necessarily to continue to move to trigger that pain, but there are certainly a way that you can move around and compose, and that's where it's really interesting and important to have someone to guide you through this. So there are different ways for you to maybe change how you address your movement, or just change how you move properly, how you pick up things from the floor, what creates this pain, and how can you work around it. But remember, you are not harmed, you're just hurt. So sometimes you can have much more control over your perception of pain in that situation. On the other hand, if you are harmed, so if you feel yourself that, and if you know that there is tissue damage, then be careful. And a good example of that is you twist your ankle really bad, and now your ankle is the size of a football, Well, are you going to keep running on it? Probably not, because yes, you can see the signs of inflammation. You can see how there is an edema. So of course, now your body is telling you, hey, don't walk on this. And now is the proper time to apply other strategies. At first, you might want to rest, to elevate, and to try to control the inflammatory response, but not for too long, because also research shows that even if you are harmed, so you have tissue damage, it will also be very beneficial for you to keep moving the joint in one way or another. And remember, this is all very relative, right? If you just had a ankle sprain really bad, and someone tells you, okay, you should be able to run on it 3 days after, well, to make a bad joke, run away from that person. But of course, this is going to be progressive, right? Rehabilitation, when we experience pain, has everything to do with dosage and how we can progress through things. So to conclude, are you harmed or are you hurt? And remember, your beliefs, your fears, your thoughts, and your emotions are all filters for how do you perceive pain, and that you have mostly control over. So you can maybe adjust, and even you can work yourself on how do you perceive pain, and therefore you can also change how do you feel it in your body, which is crazy. If you're really curious into that actually, and you would like to know more about pain in general and about what kind of tools you could use to do those different change, well, if you didn't know, I am currently building an online program. It will be running right now in October and in November, but this cohort is already full. So if you are interested, I will put it in the note of the episodes, and there will be a form where you can fill in your information and your condition, and the next cohort is going to start in January. It's all remote, it's 30 minutes per week, so It's nothing crazy that you have to commit to. You just have some homework where you're going to try a couple of tools, and hopefully those tools, they're very practical, down to earth, and based on science, so you can use that and hopefully better manage your pain. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and on that note, I will say thanks again, and I will see you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Internal Compass podcast.